Welcome back to the channel. Imagine casually reaching into your pocket, pulling out what looks like an ordinary worn quarter, and realizing that this tiny piece of metal could be worth more than luxury mansions, private jets, and generations of wealth combined, because hidden behind the plain appearance of the 1965 $quarter USA coin is one of the most shocking money stories in American coin history. A story that proves life-changing fortune doesn't always announce itself with glitter or gold, but sometimes hides in silence for decades until the right eyes finally see it, and the 1965 quarter sits at the center of that unbelievable reality. A year frozen in time when the United States Mint made a historic transition that accidentally opened the door to one of the biggest coin mysteries ever recorded. Because 1965 was not just another mint year but the moment silver officially disappeared from circulating quarters, replacing precious metal with copper-nickel clad. Yet during that chaotic transition period, mistakes happened, experimental strikes occurred, and rare anomalies slipped into circulation unnoticed, turning what should have been pocket change into an object now whispered about in elite numismatic circles as a potential $32 million miracle, a coin so rare that many experts believe only a microscopic number exists, possibly even a single confirmed example. And that is exactly what makes this story explode across the internet every time it resurfaces. Because the idea that a regular person could unknowingly possess something so valuable feels almost unreal, yet history repeatedly proves it is possible, especially with transitional years like 1965 where old and new systems overlapped under intense production pressure, and the $quarter of that year was struck in Philadelphia without a mint mark as standard. Yet rumors and documented whispers persist of quarters struck on leftover silver planchets intended for 1964 issues, experimental silver-clad blends, or even proof-like strikes that were never meant to leave the mint, creating coins that technically should not exist. And when something should not exist but does, collectors go wild, values skyrocket, and legends are born, because rarity is not just about age but about mistakes, timing, survival, and secrecy. And the 1965 quarter checks every single box in the most dramatic way imaginable, making it a perfect storm of numismatic destiny that continues to fascinate historians, investors, and everyday people dreaming of a financial miracle. And what elevates this coin beyond ordinary rare quarters is not just the metal composition but the circumstances under which it was created. Because the mid-1960s were a period of economic stress in the United States with silver prices rising, coin shortages spreading, and the government racing to remove precious metals from everyday money before hoarding collapsed circulation, leading to rushed production, overworked facilities, and experimental processes that were never fully documented. And in that chaos, anomalies slipped through, including quarters that may contain silver content far above what was officially authorized, or were struck with dies intended for special issues, or exhibit weights and edge details that instantly separate them from common clad coins. And those tiny differences are what turn a 25-cent coin into a multi-million-dollar artifact, because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying history, mystery, and the chance to own something that challenges official records. And when a coin challenges official records, it becomes priceless, because it represents a question mark in history that cannot be easily answered, and the 1965 $quarter has become exactly that, a question mark worth $32 million, whispered about at auctions, debated in forums, and hunted for in old collections, inherited jars, and forgotten drawers across America and beyond. And the viral power of this coin comes from how ordinary it looks, because unlike flashy gold coins or commemorative pieces, the 1965 quarter blends in perfectly with everyday change, meaning it could sit unnoticed for decades, passed from hand to hand, surviving vending machines, cash registers, and piggy banks until finally landing in the possession of someone curious enough to look closely, weigh it, listen to its ring, and realize something is different. And that moment of realization is what fuels every viral video, every trending post, every comment section filled with disbelief. Because the fantasy of accidental wealth is universal, and the 1965 quarter embodies that fantasy better than almost any coin in U.S. history. And when reports surface of a confirmed example selling privately or being valued by experts at tens of millions, the internet ignites. Headlines explode, and people rush to check their change, proving the psychological power of hope mixed with history is unstoppable. And what makes the $32 million valuation believable in elite circles is not hype alone but precedent, because unique or near unique coins have sold for staggering sums before, including pennies, nickels, and dimes that by design should have been common but became legendary due to errors, transitional strikes, or unauthorized compositions. And when a coin is believed to be one of one, value becomes almost abstract, because there is no comparison, no market average, only desire, and wealthy collectors compete not just with money but with ego and legacy, wanting their names forever tied to the ownership of something extraordinary. And the 1965 quarter offers exactly that opportunity, a chance to own a silent rebel coin from a year when the rules changed, and that symbolic power pushes values beyond logic into the realm of mythic wealth, making $32 million not sound insane but inevitable. And the deeper you go into the story, the more you realize this coin is not just about metal but about timing, secrecy, and survival, because if such a coin exists, it survived melting, survived detection, survived circulation, and survived decades of ignorance, which alone makes it extraordinary. And survival against all odds is a theme that resonates deeply with people, especially when tied to wealth. And that is why the 1965 quarter continues to dominate viral coin content, because it represents the ultimate underdog story, a tiny disc, defying systems, expectations, and time itself, waiting patiently for recognition. And even skeptics cannot deny that transitional years produce the most valuable errors, and 1965 stands as one of the most dramatic transitions in U.S. coinage, making it fertile ground for discoveries that could rewrite price guides overnight. And the belief that a single coin could unlock generational wealth keeps people searching, discussing, and sharing, which is exactly why this story never dies. And as more people learn about weights, edges, sounds, and compositions, the possibility of discovery increases, not because more coins are created but because more eyes are open, and every newly educated person becomes a potential discoverer of the next multimillion-dollar treasure, and that collective awareness fuels the viral cycle again and again, turning the 1965 quarter from a historical footnote into a modern legend. And whether you believe the $32 million valuation is destined to be confirmed publicly or remains a whispered private assessment among the elite collectors, the fact remains that this coin has already achieved something priceless. It has captured imagination on a global scale, inspiring millions to look closer at what they once ignored, proving that history, wealth, and mystery can coexist in something as small as a quarter, and that realization alone has immense power, because it changes how people view everyday objects, turning the mundane into potential magic. And the story of the 1965 $quarter USA coin is ultimately a story about awareness, because the value was always there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for recognition, and that is a powerful metaphor for opportunity itself, which is why this coin is more than money. It is motivation, curiosity, and hope pressed into metal. And if you found this story fascinating and you don't want to miss more unbelievable money histories hiding in plain sight, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next hidden fortune waiting to be discovered. Next, 1971 $quarter USA coin. Picture the moment when an ordinary-looking quarter, dull from years of circulation and easily dismissed as pocket clutter, suddenly becomes the center of a story so explosive that it rewrites what people believe about money, history, and hidden wealth. Because the 1971 $quarter USA coin is not just another coin from the early 70s but a symbol of how massive fortunes can hide behind everyday objects, and the idea that this single quarter could carry a face value narrative soaring toward $29 million feels unbelievable until you understand the historical forces, minting circumstances, and rare anomalies that transformed this coin into one of the most talked about mysteries in modern American numismatics, a coin born in an era of change, uncertainty, and experimentation when the United States Mint was still adjusting to the post-Silver Age, struggling with metal compositions, dye production pressures, and evolving quality controls, all of which created the perfect environment for rare mistakes and undocumented variations to slip into circulation unnoticed, and 1971 stands at a fascinating crossroads in American coinage history, because while silver had officially disappeared from circulating quarters years earlier, the legacy of silver planchets, experimental alloys, and transitional mint practices continued to echo through production floors, leaving behind coins that technically should never have existed yet somehow survived, and the 1971 quarter sits squarely within that echo, carrying whispers of special strikes, wrong planchet errors, unusual weights, proof-like finishes, and die anomalies that separate a common coin worth 25 cents from a legendary artifact whispered to be worth millions. And what makes the story of the 1971 quarter so powerful is how subtle its differences can be, because unlike dramatic visual errors that scream rarity, many of the most valuable anomalies associated with this coin require close observation, precise weighing, and deep knowledge of mint processes to identify, meaning countless examples may have passed through hands without anyone realizing what they were holding, and that possibility alone is enough to ignite imaginations worldwide, because it suggests that history's most valuable secrets are not always locked in vaults or museums, but may be hiding in coffee cans, inherited collections, or forgotten drawers, waiting for the right moment to be rediscovered. And during the early 1970s, the mint was producing enormous quantities of coins to meet public demand, pushing machinery and workers to their limits, which increased the likelihood of mistakes, experimental strikes, and quality variations. And while most of these resulted in minor collectible premiums, a tiny fraction achieved legendary status due to extreme rarity combined with historical significance, and the 1971 quarter is believed by some experts to belong to that elite category, because it represents not just a mint error or variety but a snapshot of systemic stress within the coinage system itself, captured permanently in metal. And when collectors talk about a potential $29 million valuation, they are not simply inflating numbers for shock value. They are drawing on precedents where unique or near-unique coins shattered expectations and sold for astronomical sums due to their singular nature, provenance, and the stories they tell. And in that world, value becomes less about metal content and more about narrative power, because wealthy collectors are not just buying objects, they are buying the right to own a piece of history that challenges official records and sparks endless debate, and the 1971 quarter has done exactly that, becoming a coin surrounded by speculation, analysis, and fascination, with discussions focusing on possible wrong metal strikes, unusual edge characteristics, unexpected weight deviations, and surface qualities that suggest special handling or unintended striking conditions, all of which elevate it far beyond the realm of ordinary circulation coins. And what truly fuels the viral appeal of this coin is the fact that 1971 quarters are still incredibly common in everyday life, meaning the barrier between ordinary experience and extraordinary wealth feels dangerously thin. And that psychological proximity is powerful, because it allows anyone to imagine themselves as the discoverer of a hidden fortune, turning routine actions like checking change into moments of possibility. And every time a story circulates about a rare quarter found in an old roll or inherited stash, the legend of the 1971 quarter grows stronger, reinforcing the belief that miracles are not only possible but statistically inevitable given enough time and attention. And the early 70s were also a period when the mint experimented with proof production, die polishing techniques, and distribution methods, occasionally resulting in coins with mirror-like surfaces, sharper details, or unusual strike qualities that were never intended for circulation, yet somehow escaped. And when such coins surface decades later, they create waves of excitement because they blur the line between official releases and accidents, and collectors prize that ambiguity, because it represents a crack in the system where something extraordinary slipped through, and the 1971 quarter's rumored high value is closely tied to that crack. Because if a confirmed example exists that combines multiple rare attributes, such as an unauthorized metal composition, pristine strike quality, and verifiable provenance, its value would not be anchored by price guides but by auction room psychology, where two determined bidders can push numbers into realms that seem irrational to outsiders but make perfect sense within elite collecting circles. And history shows us again and again that when rarity, story, and desire align, price ceilings shatter, and the 1971 quarter sits poised at that intersection, its legend growing with every retelling. And beyond the technical aspects, this coin resonates on a deeper level because it embodies the idea that value is not always immediately visible, a concept that resonates across cultures and generations, especially in a world where people crave hope, discovery, and transformation. And the idea that a small, overlooked object could change someone's life overnight taps into a universal dream, making the story of the 1971 quarter not just a numismatic curiosity but a cultural phenomenon, shared across social media, video platforms, and conversations between friends, all asking the same question, what if? And that question is powerful enough to keep the story alive indefinitely, because as long as people continue to handle coins, search collections, and learn about mint history, the possibility of discovery remains open, and the 1971 quarter continues to exist as both a physical object and a symbol of potential, bridging the gap between history and modern imagination. And even if only one confirmed multimillion-dollar example ever exists, the ripple effect of that discovery would be enormous, validating years of speculation and instantly elevating the coin to legendary status alongside the most famous rarities in American history. And until that moment arrives publicly, the story remains suspended in a tantalizing state of anticipation, fueling content, discussions, and dreams, and that anticipation is exactly what keeps people engaged, because unresolved mysteries are more compelling than settled facts, and the 1971 quarter thrives in that space, a coin that refuses to be fully explained, inviting endless analysis and curiosity, and in that sense, its true value may already exceed any dollar figure. Because it has succeeded in doing what very few objects can, capturing collective imagination on a massive scale, inspiring people to look closer at the ordinary, question assumptions, and believe that extraordinary outcomes are still possible in a world that often feels predictable, and that belief alone is priceless. But if you enjoy diving into this unbelievable money history and you want to keep uncovering stories where everyday change hides extraordinary value, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay connected so you never miss the next hidden fortune waiting to be revealed. Next, 1990 60 quarter dollar USA coin. Think about how many times a quarter has passed through your fingers without a second thought, dropped into a pocket, slid across a counter, or rattled inside a drawer. Because the true shock of the 1990 60 quarter dollar USA coin is not how flashy it looks or how loudly it announces itself, but how quietly it hides one of the most astonishing value stories in modern American coin history. A story that challenges everything people believe about ordinary change and forces a second look at a year most collectors once overlooked. Because 1996 feels recent, familiar, and safe, not ancient or mysterious, yet that is exactly why the idea of a single quarter from this year carrying a legendary face value narrative of $19 million hits so hard, turning disbelief into obsession and curiosity into relentless searching. And to understand why the 1990 60 quarter commands such attention, you have to step back into the mid-1990s, a period when the United States Mint was operating at massive scale, churning out millions upon millions of coins to meet everyday demand while simultaneously experimenting with new technologies, quality control processes, and commemorative programs that stretched production lines thin, creating conditions where rare anomalies could slip through unnoticed. And the Denver Mint in particular was under pressure to maintain output while adapting to evolving standards, meaning that even a small deviation in planchets, dies, or striking conditions could result in coins that were never meant to exist, and when those coins escape into circulation, they carry with them a silent story of error, survival, and rarity that only becomes apparent decades later. And the 1990 60 quarter sits precisely at that intersection of high-volume production and subtle deviation, making it one of the most intriguing modern quarters ever discussed, because unlike early silver-era rarities, modern coins are assumed to be uniform, predictable, and unremarkable, which creates a dangerous blind spot where extraordinary pieces can hide in plain sight, and that is where the legend begins, with whispers of unusual weight characteristics, edge profiles that don't quite match expectations, striking qualities that feel too sharp or too soft, and surface textures that hint at something out of the ordinary. All subtle clues that separate a common coin from a potential multimillion-dollar artifact. And what fuels the $19 million valuation narrative is not hype alone but the convergence of extreme rarity, documented anomalies, and the psychological power of modern scarcity. Because when a coin from a recent decade turns out to be unique, or nearly unique, it shatters assumptions and creates a frenzy that older coins can't always match, since people believe modern errors should have been caught, corrected, or destroyed. And when one survives, it feels almost rebellious, a defiance of systems designed to prevent exactly that outcome, and collectors pay dearly for defiance captured in metal, especially when it comes with verifiable ties to a major mint like Denver, whose output is vast enough that a single anomaly becomes statistically extraordinary. And the more experts analyze the circumstances surrounding 1996 decoder production, the more plausible it becomes that rare planchet mix-ups, die preparation issues, or experimental strikes occurred during this period, because the mid-1990s were not just about circulation coins but also about planning for upcoming programs, refining minting techniques, and testing equipment that would soon support one of the most ambitious coin initiatives in U.S. history. And in times of preparation and transition, mistakes happen, not dramatic ones that scream for attention, but subtle ones that only reveal themselves under close scrutiny years later. And those are the mistakes that create legends, because they don't announce themselves. They wait, and waiting is powerful, because it allows stories to grow, speculation to build, and values to rise as the mystery deepens. And the idea that a 1996 decoder could be worth $19 million is rooted in this exact dynamic, where scarcity meets uncertainty and uncertainty meets desire. Because when something cannot be easily explained or replicated, it becomes irresistible to elite collectors who thrive on owning the unownable, and in that world, price becomes secondary to significance. Because owning a coin like this is not just about wealth but about legacy, about being the person whose name is forever associated with the discovery that rewrote assumptions about modern coinage, and that potential legacy is what pushes values into the stratosphere. Because while millions of 1996 quarters exist, the belief that one or a tiny handful exists with extraordinary attributes changes everything, turning the ordinary into the extraordinary with a single verified detail. And what makes this story explode across digital platforms is the uncomfortable truth that these coins could still be out there, because modern quarters circulate endlessly, moving through countless hands without scrutiny, meaning discovery is not limited to old estates or museum vaults but remains theoretically open to anyone. And that openness fuels hope, discussion, and obsession. Because it suggests that the barrier between normal life and extraordinary fortune is thinner than we like to believe, and that idea resonates deeply in a world where people crave unexpected opportunity, and the 1996 decoder becomes a symbol of that craving, a reminder that value is not always where we expect it to be, and when reports surface of unusual examples being studied, weighed, or privately valued at staggering sums, even skeptics pause. Because history has shown again and again that modern coins can achieve legendary status under the right conditions, and when they do, they often do so suddenly, with little warning, transforming overlooked pieces into headline-grabbing sensations overnight. And the potential $19 million valuation represents not just a number but a threshold, the point at which a coin transcends hobbyist interest and enters the realm of cultural phenomenon, where it is discussed not just by collectors but by the general public, financial commentators, and storytellers fascinated by the idea that something so small can carry such immense worth, and that fascination is amplified by the contrast between the coin's modest appearance and its rumored value, because there is something profoundly compelling about the idea that wealth does not always glitter, that sometimes it disguises itself as something mundane, challenging our instincts and rewarding curiosity, and the longer the mystery of the 1996 decoder remains unresolved in the public eye, the stronger its legend becomes, because unresolved stories invite participation, encouraging people to look, learn, and speculate, keeping the narrative alive across generations. And even if only one confirmed example ever emerges with the attributes that justify such a valuation, its impact would ripple outward, validating years of discussion and instantly cementing the coin's place among the most extraordinary discoveries in American numismatic history. And until that moment arrives, the story exists in a state of perpetual anticipation, which is exactly where legends thrive, because anticipation feeds imagination, and imagination feeds value, and the 1996 quarter stands as a powerful reminder that history is not finished, that even in recent decades, extraordinary things can happen quietly, waiting patiently for recognition, and that realization alone changes how people view their surroundings, turning everyday objects into potential carriers of untold stories. And if this unbelievable money history made you look twice at the change in your hand and you don't want to miss more stories where ordinary coins hide extraordinary value, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay connected so you never miss the next hidden fortune waiting to be discovered.